Welcome to Horsemen. Episode 8, Magog.
He will go out to deceive the nations, called Gog and Magog, in every corner of the earth. He will gather them together for battle, a mighty army, as numberless as sand along the seashore. Book of Revelation, chapter 20, verse 8. Mindy Lamb's new life at the Anadar Institute began with surprising ease. Despite several potential hurdles between leaving her life in Denver and committing to her new life in Manzanola, Colorado, somehow everything fell into place. That first phone call she made to Dr. Anadar's personal number seemed to have triggered some kind of digital marker, and Mindy was suddenly encountering the Anadar Institute everywhere she went. Social media advertisements, search engine advertisements, streaming television, bookstores. It seemed to her that overnight, the entire world was encouraging her to reach out to Dr. Anadar and follow through. So, she did. She called the number again, and this time a different voice answered, another woman's voice, someone named Nancy. And in only a few minutes, she had an appointment to meet Dr. Raymond Anadar himself and get a tour of the facility. Easy. The next hurdle was her husband. How would she convince a man so grounded in norms, a man who was deeply skeptical of anything marked alternative? But to her surprise, he was one step ahead of her. So far as I can tell, his work is grounded in real science, he told her after researching Anadar and the Institute. And so long as they don't mess with your steroid protocol, I think it's fine to meet and see what they have to offer. I know they want to meet with you alone, but I insist on driving you there. Again, easy. So the following week, they drove 2.5 hours south to Manzanola and followed the long, private drive that led them to the stunningly beautiful Anadar Institute. It looked at once very modern and somehow primitive or built out of the earth. There were no trees, no mountains, just open, grassy plains with a series of buildings somehow blending in with the wide-open sameness of the landscape. Everything was masonry, with stucco and stone surfaces and roofs covered in natural grasses. There were several buildings, at least 7, most of them partially dug into the ground, with solar panels and what seemed like stone water tanks. Here and there were sheep and goats and cows, apparently free to roam around. And in the middle of it all was a crystalline pool and a series of raised garden beds. It was a paradise in the middle of nowhere. Mindy and her husband were welcomed by technicians, as they called themselves, and while Mindy was taken to Dr. Anadar's office, her husband was given a tour of the Institute. He had many questions and was satisfied with their answers. The center seemed legitimate and impressive. It was a solid business based on sound medical research. It just blended theoretic therapies that, whether they were psychosomatic or not, were proving effective. By the end of the tour, he was open to taking the next step. Mindy, meanwhile, had a very different experience. She was welcomed into a wide-open room with windows on either side. The room had several stations, each with different equipment and furniture. She was trying to figure out what everything was for when Dr. Raymond Anadar entered, wearing a pressed, natural-colored linen shirt and pants, and holding a paper folder. "Hi, Mindy," he said as he briefly fumbled the paperwork before shaking her hand. "Sorry, just looking at the data." He then fluttered more of the papers awkwardly, and Mindy nervously giggled. I would have thought you'd have everything in an app or something, she said, trying to calm herself down by chatting. No, he said with a frown. There's no cell service or Wi-Fi here, and we only have one building where we use computers. That's on purpose. EMFs are terrible for immune-compromised people. That's also why we're way out here in the country, electromagnetically free. Don't you feel better here? Mindy took a breath and checked in with herself. It was true. For whatever reason, she did feel better. In fact, she felt great, full of energy and optimism, which had been hard to come by since her official diagnosis. Giant cell myocarditis, Dr. Anadars said, looking at one of the papers. Then he cocked his head as if to say, no big deal. This was surprising. Every other doctor would wince and brace when they read her diagnosis. And your other numbers... Oh. Now he looked surprised. Wow, he said and looked up at her. She wasn't sure what was happening as he looked at her face, studying her features. You have a particular genetic marker that is usually only seen in Filipinos. Do you have Filipino in your ancestry? He asked with a hopeful glimmer in his eye. Mindy frowned suspiciously. I don't think so, she said. Oh, how about Ashkenazi? He asked, now looking very excited. I don't even know what that is, she said now, shaking her head slightly. Your genetic test, he said, shows, something I've only seen in people with Filipino ancestry, or Ashkenazi, or a particular part of North Africa, Carthage. It's similar to a pattern I've found in people with Ulster heritage, Northern Irish. I was adopted, but I was told my birth parents were mostly German and English, she said, feeling a little sick to her stomach. Well, could be, but, he said, still studying her and nodding his head. Normally, I'd do a series of tests to see if this might be a healing protocol that could help, but we don't need to do them. With this marker, I know that this is where you need to be, Mindy. Mindy frowned and took a breath in. She didn't feel comfortable with his confidence, nor in all this apparent data about her ancestry. She considered standing up and asking to be brought back to her husband, but decided first to ask. My husband is a doctor, and I understand how important it is to know your family history, what conditions are passed on, but... Yes, sorry, I'll explain, he said. He then invited her to sit in one of the strangely shaped chairs. She hesitated, but had to admit it looked very comfortable. So as she eased into what looked like the seat, the chair shifted and dropped her into a supported squatting position. It was odd at first, but then remarkably soothing. You have a rare bit of DNA, a marker, like a genetic pearl, that comes with profound gifts, but also challenges. The challenges, autoimmune diseases, serious conditions that, if left untreated, result more often than not in death. Then he shrugged, as if death were ordinary to him. But the advantages are remarkable, he continued. So, for instance, do you have vivid dreams? Mindy blinked a few times and then said, well, yes, I suppose. And when you have these dreams, does it seem like you're in a real place? Almost more real than this world, this real world? It was true. Her dreams of the roundhouse and the other worlds she seemed to visit seemed incredibly real. And yes, sometimes more real than her actual real life. Sometimes, she said. And do you feel worse when you wake up from these dreams? Does it exhaust you to have these dreams? Definitely, she said immediately. This was so true. She had been having these dreams more often, and her health did seem to be getting worse and worse, to the point where she had had to take a leave of absence from her teaching. This was the hardest thing of all. She loved her job and got such emotional support from her students. She hated leaving, but the dizzy spells and mind fog intensified until she simply couldn't do her job. "Then you are in the right place," he said confidently. "You don't have to feel that way. I have treated several people like you, including my wife, and all have gotten much better. And so you know, 60% of our members leave the center with their autoimmune conditions completely cured. Completely." Mindy was indeed impressed with 60%. That was an enormous number, and one to celebrate. But what got her attention in that moment was the word he'd used. Members. "What are members?" she asked. "Yes," said Dr. Anadar with a smile. "We don't say patients because that sounds too one way, as if we are here to heal you. As if the arrangement is, you pay us to make you better. But in this institute, we have a different model. No one here pays in money. There is no official fee, no insurance, no cost. Financially." Mindy felt a little nervous at this. She knew full well that you can't get something for free. She started looking around to see if she could find any clues as to what the doctor was going to ask of her. But then Dr. Anadar answered this question. "The exchange is that you work here. You offer something to the community. Depending on your skills or passions or interests, we find a way for you to bring value to the center. We find that people get better faster when they feel that they have a real purpose here. It's very common for people with autoimmune conditions to feel less than, to feel like they are living life incorrectly or are a burden to their environment. You may or may not feel this way, but it is our experience that people who have useful work heal faster. This is the compensation. And truthfully, we need you." Mindy nodded slightly as she listened to him. He was convincing, she had to admit, and truthfully, there was something very calming, reassuring about him. But there was no denying that this was a very odd offer, even suspect. A hospital where you work for treatment? But she didn't say anything. Instead, she allowed herself to wonder, what would her work be? If he told her they needed her to teach children at the center, would she consider this? That was her true passion and talent. She loved teaching more than anything. Again, even though she hadn't asked, he had an answer ready. "So," he went on, "in your case, that is, people with your genetic profile, we have a special role for you and, well, it's as close to royalty as we get around here. You see, your abilities, what you can do when you dream, and I can tell you more about that later, but your unique skill is incredibly valuable to our research. Basically, Mindy, you could help a lot of people, billions of people, just by being you. And what that looks like is regular blood and saliva tests and reports about your dreams and what you experienced and learned, and then just living comfortably." Mindy waited. Was he going to say more about what living comfortably meant? "I'm not going to lie, Mindy," Dr. Anadar said. "Your condition is very serious, and your skill, your talent, what happens when you dream, well, it takes a toll. We don't know specifically the relationship yet, but the vivid dreaming is connected to your autoimmune condition. It may even cause it. Like I said, we don't know yet how or why or what we need to do to make it stop. But this I can tell you. A heart transplant is not going to cure you. It won't. I'm sorry to say, Mindy. Your new heart would only fall prey to the same condition. Or it would change into MS or lupus or something else. Your condition is permanent, I'm afraid, until we can find a cure. And to do that, we need you here." Mindy suddenly felt weak and very, very tired. So much was swimming inside of her. She wanted to object or at least challenge Dr. Anadar, but now all she wanted to do was close her eyes and sleep. Raymond seemed to notice this and went to a cabinet under one of the windows. He pulled out what looked like bottled water. "It's something we make here," he said, offering her the bottle. "A chia seed drink mixed with a distilled cactus water. It sounds awful, but it will help." She was too thirsty and too tired to refuse. She drank it down, and within seconds, she did feel better. What was this place? "You will be very well cared for here, Mindy," the doctor said. "You will eat the most healing foods, engage in the most healing activities, sleep so deeply, and meet some of the most incredible people you have ever met. Most importantly, we will look into the stories, the narratives that have made you who you are, the stories that have formed your sense of self, and we will tend to those stories. That is where the healing really happens. But we can talk more about that later. The thing is, you will need to live here, and I'm afraid only you. Your husband can't stay. It just doesn't work to have family members on campus. We tried it, and it doesn't work. People who aren't compromised in the same way create a kind of dissonance that gets in the way of healing. It's a big commitment, I know. But I can't stress enough, Mindy. We really are your best chance at getting better." Her thoughts and emotions began to swirl around again. Everything he said seemed to make sense, but at the same time seemed completely crazy. She started to feel overwhelmed and confused, not sure what to do. She just wanted some help, someone she could trust to help her know what to do. "I need to talk to my husband," she said softly, trying not to show her overwhelm. "Thank you for the drink. It helped." Dr. Anadar took the container and then looked a little nervously at her. "Do talk to your husband," he said cautiously, "and consider starting now. Your husband can get whatever you need and bring it back. I'm concerned that your condition is approaching critical. I believe we need to start today." Mindy looked at Dr. Anadar. She wanted to believe what he was saying. If it was true, she wanted to jump at the opportunity. But deep down, she sensed something dark, something lurking, as if either her condition or this possible new treatment was about to take over her life. "I need to talk to Terry," she said, moving to stand up. "Thank you." She looked at Dr. Anadar and couldn't remember his name. She stretched her mind and could not find it. The name was lost. "Please," he said, pointing to the door. "I'll show you out so the two of you can talk." Mindy was now very worried as she left the room and headed down the hall. At the exit, she saw her husband standing with a young woman in the same kind of pressed linen shirt that Dr. Anadar wore. She was walking out into the sunlight toward her husband when she suddenly felt lightheaded. "I," was all she said before everything started to darken and swirl. For a period of time, a time outside of time, she was suddenly at the round house of her dreams. She stood in its center and looked at all the doors that she knew led to other worlds. She thought of Maisie and wished to see her. And then she thought of the young woman, the girl who had told her about Alpha Centauri. She shivered as she thought of the girl. And then one of the doors suddenly opened. As Mindy slowly approached the doorway, she felt a sense of doom, as if she were about to receive some very bad news or someone was going to jump out and scare her. She came to the threshold and could make out a hazy image of a small room. The walls were white, and she could vaguely see a bed on one side and perhaps someone lying in the bed. She looked around the room some more. She knew she needed to enter, but The hair on the back of her neck was raised in warning. This was a moment, a very important moment. She knew this. If she stepped into this room, something would be set in motion, something that she would not be able to stop. Then she heard a voice, a familiar voice, say, "Go." It was Maisie's voice, and it was all she needed to take the step and commit. As soon as she crossed the threshold, everything came into focus. A young woman lay in the bed. She was on her side and seemed to be asleep. Mindy moved slowly and looked around the room. Bars on the single window, bars on the single door, a bed, a desk and a chair, and that was it. Was this a cell? What was this place? "You came back," said the figure in the bed. Mindy looked down and saw the same girl from her dreams, the 19th century girl, Edna Madsen, looking up at her, only now with endless love and appreciation. "You are going to join us." Mindy felt a flutter in her chest, and she took a deep breath before speaking. "Us?" she asked. "Join who?" "The Horsemen," Edna said with great pride. "We four who will bring about the great unveiling, the apocalypse, the end times. He who rides the white horse will lead us. The rider of the black horse will keep us safe. I shall ride the pale horse and tell you all the secrets, and you shall ride the red horse." "What do I do?" asked Mindy hesitantly, wondering about her role in this incredible story. "You will bring us together," Edna said, with a smile and such love that Mindy felt like she was talking to an adoring fan. But then Edna's expression shifted and looked shadowy and even frightened. "But you will only do this by consorting with the beast," she said. "It is the only way. Only the beast can give you the tools to begin the unveiling. Only the beast knows how and where and when we can begin. But you cannot let him tempt you. You cannot let him pull you away from your call. It is very dangerous, but that is why you were chosen. You are the bravest of us all." Edna gave her another wide and warm smile. Then there was a knock at the door and a nurse entered. "Oh, Nurse Jane, I brought her medication. Should I come back?" "No, it's fine," Mindy heard herself say. She was apparently someone named Jane in this world, and it was probably best for her to leave right away. She had heard enough. "Goodbye," she said, looking at Edna. "Oh, we are going to see a lot of each other," said Edna with a wink. Mindy stood still for a moment, not sure what to do. Then slowly she turned toward the door and walked through. She immediately woke in a soft bed inside a room bathed in equally soft light. "There you are," said her husband, Terry. "You're safe. You just had a little spell outside." Mindy blinked and slowly moved her head from side to side. Terry and two women dressed in linen were looking down at her. Her episode with Edna began to fade. "How you doing now?" he said softly. "Oh, okay," she said, feeling the world reintegrate as if it were made of Legos. She wanted to tell him that she was suspicious of the Institute and of the doctor, that there was something off about the place. The image of Edna flickered in her mind for a moment as she continued. "I talked with Dr. Anadar." "I did too," said Terry. "You've been out for almost an hour." "Really?" she asked, feeling a flicker of panic. What did he say?" I think he said the same thing to me that he did to you, and, well, it comes down to how you feel about it, but if you wanted to try this, if you wanted to give this, I don't know, a few days or a week and see how you feel, I'm okay with it. They have internists here and even a helicopter to get you to a hospital if it comes to that. They're the real deal, and I feel like they'll take good care of you. If nothing else, you'll get a very comfortable rest for a week. But it's up to you, Mind. You need to feel right about it. Mindy looked at her husband and marveled. This was the last thing she thought her husband would agree to. This was not at all the kind of medicine he believed in. Stories? Was he really signing off on this? Whether it was her surprise or just the ordinary way in which her dreams with Maisie and Edna naturally faded, she now had no memory of the time in the roundhouse. No images, no specific words. Only a slight feeling of doom. It was confusing. Was the doom because of the Institute or because of her serious condition? She chose to put her attention on her husband and his positive response. He clearly wanted her to stay. It was a beautiful place, and she had to admit that she did feel so much better there, just being there. So, pushing the feeling of doom aside, she made a decision. "Okay," she said, "let's try it for a week." Terry smiled and kissed her on the forehead. "I need to get you some things from home, so I'll be back tonight. I can't stay here at the Institute, so I'll stay at a hotel in town tonight, just to make sure this is going to work for you. They said I could come back in the morning, and then we'll see. No commitments. We'll take it a step at a time." Mindy nodded, but she felt that the time of decisions and commitments had already passed. During her visit to the roundhouse and then Edna Madsen's room, she had already made a binding decision that felt impossible to change. So lying there with her husband attending her, she had no conscious awareness that she was now a horseman, the rider of the red horse, the one who would bring all 4 horsemen together. But what she could feel, quite clearly, was that now there was no turning back.